On this edition of the program, the possibility of a Biden landslide from somebody who doesn't think a whole lot of Joe Biden's chances. Ettingermentum makes his debut on the program, and a surprise drop-in person with the cosmic Kevin Ryan at times. Great episode. It's all coming up. Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for June 14th, 2024. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here in Austin, Texas. And we're not going to take a whole lot of time. We got two amazing guests here on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, the debut of Ettingermentum. We've spent a lot of time talking about the polls on this show as they evolve throughout the summer, and I'm very pleased to talk to somebody that I think has an always interesting, exciting, and fresh take on where this election is headed. Ladies and gentlemen, Ettingermentum writer Josh, welcome to the show, buddy.
Yeah, nice to be on.
All right, so you wrote a piece that I thought was very, very interesting because your state of the race, as I have followed you, has not been particularly sunny to either candidates, but you have been particularly biting to how Joe Biden has not only been positioned in this campaign, but also how he has run this campaign. And yet, after the conviction of Donald Trump on 34 felony counts in New York, you had a piece saying that there is a small window, but it is real, that we could not only see a Joe Biden victory, but a Joe Biden landslide. Start with your state of the case and then bring us through the general idea of why the convictions could be a game changer.
Yeah, so, like you said, I have not really been positive towards either candidate this cycle. I think that they're both some of the worst options either party could have chosen, just kind of subjectively and kind of objectively speaking with their approval ratings, their just how they're liked, how they're kind of regarded culturally. There's people just are not excited about these figures. They're very kind of spent forces politically. Both of them had presidencies that were regarded to have been failures. And they're kind of there's a reason you have a guy who had actual brainworms getting 10% of the vote. That is a sign of mass discontent, I think. So I have focused a bit more on Biden and why I think that he is kind of uniquely poor because I'm within kind of more left-wing discourse, and I would like to see Democrats run a stronger candidate. I would not like to see Republicans run a stronger candidate. To the extent that they are running a poor candidate like Trump, I'm happy about that. But as far as Democrats are going, running a poor candidate, that's not exactly preferable. So I do try to make the points that I make about why they're not running a necessarily good candidate. My take on the election has sort of evolved. I wrote my first kind of state ratings last year in 2023. This was in the immediate aftermath of the 2022 midterms, and my kind of take on that was Democrats did very well against Trump-aligned candidates in the pivotal states, despite there being a major Republican turnout advantage, which seemed to indicate once the electorate became more quote-unquote normal in 2024, they would keep that persuasion kind of bonus while also having a bonus from the turnout being more equal between Democrats and Republicans, and they should be expected to just do very well across the board. And we are seeing that occurring in the Senate, actually, I would say. We are seeing that occurring in the Senate races where Democrats are leading across nearly every competitive state, and then some, including in Ohio and Montana right now. But the problem with Biden that I've sort of keyed in on is that because of his unpopularity, because of his age, because of perceptions around him as just kind of this uniquely sort of unqualified figure who has not run a good presidency, he's doing worse than both a generic Democrat against generic Republicans and generic Democrats against Trump-aligned candidates who typically, when you get those matchups now, when you have a pretty typical Democrat, someone like Gretchen Whitmer, or Josh Shapiro, or any of the House candidates who won in 2022 against a Trump-aligned candidate, you see them do pretty well. They win pretty decisively. But we've seen over the past year that Biden has not been winning decisively against Trump, And so my kind of outlook on him has gotten a bit like less sunny. Initially, I had him like favored to win over 300 electoral votes. My most recent ratings, which I think I'll update soon, had him only at 270 electoral votes, which is the bare minimum required to win. So, like, I'm not particularly optimistic about him in particular. I think he's dramatically underperforming. There is sort of a case that I think I'll get to in a bit about why I think he could be expected to sort of claw his way back, and one limited circumstance where he could win by a lot, and that, just to like kind of as a spoiler alert, is the case where Trump is sent to prison. That's it.
Yes, and we will get to that in a second. One quick bow on the Biden conversation. Why, in your mind, is he such a uniquely poor candidate? Why is he not running at least the parity of some of those Senate candidates in the key swing states?
Yeah, it'd be simple just to say age, and that is the main part of it. But I think it's age plus kind of events. Because Biden was similarly old. He was historically old in 2020, and that like caused some concern about him. But it wasn't a game. It wasn't like a deal breaker. A majority of the public did see him as sort of this elder statesman kind of figure. But there is a narrow line between elder statesman and doddering old fool that I think Biden has pretty clearly crossed over the course of his presidency. Even if you're the biggest fan of him in the world, you have to admit that things haven't gone exactly ideally. Negative wage growth is going to hit you. Global chaos is going to hit you. Things like the Afghanistan withdrawal, just a pure spectacle of it, even if it was a good policy, just have played into making him look uniquely incapable and dangerous for the particular office of the presidency, in a way that the average Democrat who's just an incumbent who's been in the Senate since 2006, or is just a House candidate, like just a generic Senate candidate running against some Trump-aligned Republican, they aren't going to face those doubts. They're just going to be judged on the basis of their party and whatever qualifications they bring to the table. So Biden brings a lot of unwanted baggage that few other candidates would have to deal with. Like, it's hard to think as many Democratic candidates across the country who would bring as many like kind of like unwanted issues as he does, which is ironic given that incumbents are usually supposed to be the safe pick.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part, is that I think obviously the age is there, and it's getting to the point now where some of the conversation around it has become a little embarrassing whenever it's something where it's like, for example, and this is a thing that happens weekly now, that you have the clip of him at the Juneteenth concert where he just looks frozen, uniquely frozen amongst everybody else who's singing and dancing to the concert. And whether or not that's him just being awkward or anything, the narrative is set to a point where it just can't look like anything else other than a man who's, like an 80-year-old dude, has good and bad days. And sometimes it's just Grandpa acts weird and he should take more naps. Unfortunately, Grandpa is the president of the United States.
Yeah, and the Democratic nominee, more importantly.
Yeah,
I'd say.
Yeah. And then before we get into the Trump thing, do you think that this is something that I hear a lot on, my feedback to my show, is that there is also on the Democratic side, if you're going to uniquely look at his lack of enthusiasm amongst his own voters, there does seem to be an element of maybe lowercase b betrayal of voters who believed he was a bridge candidate. He hinted at stuff like that during the 2020 election, brought a bunch of younger candidates up on stage, said they're the future, not me. I just want to, take things to the future. And now he's running again at 80 when things aren't great.
I think people kind of like to make the point that he implicitly made a one-term pledge, which he didn't really do. It probably would have worked out well for him. I think it would have fit the moment, but he didn't do that. I think it's more and I don't want to pretend there was some he was overly deceptive here. He really doesn't really deserve much credit. Honestly, I'm being a bit too fair for him, but I try to be nice. I think it's more of just a question of having a coherent narrative, because the idea of a bridge president is an extremely coherent narrative. It gives him a very clear historical purpose that makes sense given his political persona. The idea of him as kind of a transitory elder statesman who will come and get the country back on track, and then you can get like new blood in to get like things moving again. That makes sense. It's like a story that people like are interested in. It's like a long-term kind of vision for the country that can give people a sense of forward direction and hope. Like that fits with what his persona is. The idea of him as this kind of stubbornly insisting upon being this generationally defining president in his 80s, like a two-term sort of like decade, like a Kennedy sort of figure, or like an FDR for the 2020s, where like this guy is like the guy who defines an entire era of politics. That doesn't make any sense. Like his time has come and gone in terms of him being a defining figure. I'm sure he can force it. I'm sure he can force himself into being this kind of guy who's the president for 2 terms, like when the alternative is Trump. But it's just not something that really inspires people or makes much sense in terms of how people situate themselves in the actual world. I'm sure it makes sense for him because he's a bitter old man who wants to prove some point to some DC journalist he thought disrespected him in the 1970s. But to the rest of the country, I mean, it just doesn't, it's not a story anybody has bought into. When people were thinking of how we would recover from the Trump era, a lot of it was thinking about like a new generation of leadership moving forward, not like this fossil like running the country for nearly a decade.
I think that you are dead on there. It is, and the other thing that's weird about it is that he's not like he's even coming in with a gigantic policy proposal that he's going to usher in Biden's great society or anything. All of his policy positions are essentially defensive. You know,
there are big programs, but it's very mainstream. There's nothing that he's doing that's really pushing the party in any particular direction on domestic policy. I think on foreign policy, you can make a case that he is kind of has a vision that is uniquely kind of hawkish compared to what an average Democrat might have done. But like foreign policy isn't really like the main focus for these kinds of liberal sort of generational figures he wants to be. It's always these grand domestic visions. And yeah, he had big bills, but they weren't like something he was formulating out of his White House. Most of them were negotiated by Chuck Schumer. It's not exactly something like if you get rid of the great visionary Joe Biden, we'll be totally lost at sea. That's just not the case. It really is. It's running on autopilot a little bit. The parties are very cohered around a certain sort of direction at this point. You don't need like the one guy to make sure it keeps on going forward. You can pass the baton here in a way that is coherent.
So we understand that he is a flawed candidate. We understand that even from your perspective, who looks at Donald Trump as an extraordinarily flawed candidate, probably more so than Joe Biden, but your rating right now is essentially a toss-up in terms of this being a 270 election. I assume that still runs through the Rust Belt states.
It is. He's extraordinarily lucky that the like the reappropriation went the way that it did, where like states like New York had slightly higher populations than were expected. Because if you had like a couple of those blue states losing a couple congressional districts, his path would be extraordinarily more difficult. He would be forced to win Arizona or Nevada or Georgia, where he's not running very well at all right now.
Yeah. Arizona, but let's take a look at the Trump side, because as we've set up exactly how ugly your perspective is on Biden, Donald Trump is a very unpopular candidate, and you still believe that there's a possibility, there's a world that exists where these convictions, these 34 convictions, not only matter, but they could matter in a big way.
Yeah. I think it matters along 2 axes. One is kind of, and the most enticing, the most positive kind of information I've seen from Democrats so far, is that it fits within this kind of theory that I sort of was thinking of and that I wrote about a couple months ago as to the path for Biden to win, which is kind of based off of something that was initially very discouraging for a lot of partisan Democrats. So basically, ever since the Dobbs decision in 2022, we've had special election like every couple of months, like for Congress, for like state legislative offices, for local offices, like just random these sort of test cases that happen every Tuesday, every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And generally across the board. It's not the case in every race. Democrats do very well, have done very well in these races. It was this kind of, these elections were what convinced me back in 2022 that there wouldn't be a red wave. It didn't, like, these were the races where, like, Democrats flipped Alaska. They were coming very close in these, like, Republican seats when everybody thought Republicans were going to sweep. So they were a very crucial kind of cross indicator there. And so across 2023, you had Democrats doing even better in these races. They were outrunning Biden's own performance in 2020, which was already a very strong kind of 5-point win nationally, by like 10 points. Like if you put it like, or 8 points, if you like just did it like a national swing, it would have had Democrats winning like 12 points nationally. So this was an extraordinarily good sign for them. I wrote about it at the time, like just kind of looking at it sort of like by itself, like this is a very strong sort of sign for the party, like it's kind of going a little under-discussed. But the New York Times polling people, Nate Cohn, they did a study of what was going on. And what they figured out based on like their surveys was a lot, these results, for as kind of extraordinary as they are, can be predicted by what the, like, and do match with the more poor polling results for Biden, because what he found was that people who are very engaged in politics, they follow special elections, they vote in special elections, they follow the news very closely, those groups were very strong for Biden in their polls. So this was something that they were picking up in their surveys. It wasn't some indicator that was being totally missed. The reason why Biden was still losing was because people who don't follow politics as closely, they found had very, very substantial swings towards Trump. And that was something that really kind of set a lot of people off. They were not happy to hear this. They had been kind of like leaning on the special election results as the way they said the polling was bad. And to hear that the results in those races that looked so good for Democrats not only like fit within the polling, but that they kind of proved the poor polling results that Biden was seeing, was not something that made a lot of people happy. But I thought about it, and the way that something I thought was interesting was, like, what we're seeing here is that people who follow the election closely, like shift towards Biden, they're more pro-democratic. People who don't follow it shift towards Trump. And what's going to happen over the next, like, 10 months at the time when I wrote this article, the election is going to get closer, more people are going to follow the election as it gets closer, and they may behave more like the people who are following the election closely and voting in special elections, which kind of gives Biden sort of a long-term kind of upside just through the passage of time itself.
Yeah.
And what was very encouraging, I think, for Democrats is that you had a lot of conviction after the polling after the conviction. And a lot of it showed kind of minor shifts towards Biden of about 1 or 2 points, like a little bit. It wasn't like extraordinary. But the New York Times they redid one of their surveys where, like, battleground states, where they found Trump up by 3 across the board. Their new survey found Trump up by 1, so there was a 2-point shift towards Biden. But what was really encouraging for Biden, I think, was that shift was predominantly concentrated among the people who don't pay attention to the election that much. So it was a case of people who weren't exposed to the race suddenly having this very high salience event that was bad for Trump, like being re-exposed to why they don't like Trump, and then behaving a little bit more like the people who follow the elections closely. And if that happens over the next, like, I think 5 months now, less than 5 months, where people will tune into the race, there'll be these events like the debates and like the second debate and the conventions that will drive a lot of attention, you could see people reacting in a similar way where they follow the race more closely. They realize why Trump is so batshit, why they never really liked him. And then the race just moves in Biden's favor. And you could see that, like, kind of just, like, I don't really know what kind of the ultimate upside is. It depends on how many people are open towards Biden. But it could be by quite a lot. He could get like 5 points. He could be winning like North Carolina by the end of it.
And so that was your, you put it out in a 3-step phase, essentially, that we see the movement from the convictions, and then that is not noise. It kind of stays around for more of a half-life. Then you have gigantic high-profile events where now people that don't pay attention to the election are going to be forced to pay attention to the election. Those are the debates. Those are the conventions, like you said. Yeah. But then the coup de grace is Trump going to jail. You believe that Trump going to jail would be, that's what actually supercharges this, because that is a step too far for these voters specifically, these not paying attention voters.
Voters across the board. I think it's not even like a thing that just gets those voters paying attention. It just like gets people to turn off Trump entirely because it defines the election instantly. And the thing with this is that like it's really entirely up to the discretion. It's in the unilateral control of like just a couple people, like only like Judge Merchant and the appeals officer Trump goes to whenever he appeals the case. They will decide if Trump is sentenced to prison and if his sentence is stayed on appeal. It's entirely up to them. Nobody else like impacts the decision. Congress can't vote on it. It's not a case where like you need 67 votes in the Senate to send him to jail. This is just up to two guys. And in that case, like what we've seen from polling, and I think why people were somewhat disappointed by the conviction and the result that it had, was that there was some polling around a year ago that showed where people asked if Trump was convicted, how would you vote? And it showed massive like
it was like 6 to 10%, right? Like that was it was like a huge swing.
Yeah, like double digits really. It was like going from like Trump leading in Nevada by 10 to Biden leading in Nevada by 10. Like it was like crazy numbers. But what people missed, I think, was that only really asked the specific case of where Trump is convicted and sent to prison, which has not happened yet. The surveys that asked how would you vote if Trump was just convicted, those showed a lot more limited swings of the kind, not exactly as small as what we're seeing now, but sort of in that like kind of ballpark, just like single digits, like low single digits, mid single digits. So like the real effect of this in a lot of ways is yet to come. And I think that like it feels really dumb to have to say that like Trump going to prison would impact his standing relative to Biden, because that should be kind of obvious that you don't want your presidential nominee to go to jail during the election. But, I mean, we're at the point where Trump has kind of survived so much and Biden's standing is so low that you do need to kind of, like, look at that, like, a little objectively.
Well, I think, and
it's good for him.
I think it's been because we've watched the pollings that as the indictments rolled in, there was, I think, a reasonable assumption that would hurt him. It didn't.
Yeah.
And now, also, we can't immediately correlate the idea that him getting indicted means he gets popular, or him being convicted means he gets popular, because that also follows the inflation and it not meeting wage growth. Like there's a lot of things that happened at the same time.
The indictments, I think, that whole story is very overstated. It was like, it only helped them in the Republican primary, which is like, okay, yeah, they're psycho. Wow, that's really big news. Like, I'm so shocked by that.
But that was where he started to gain with independents. That was around the same time that he started to overtake Joe Biden in national polls.
Marginally, I think that was kind of, he started doing that a little bit around September. The big shift where he starts getting consistent leads was after October 7th, which is an event I think plays into the perceptions of Biden's incompetence in a really terrible way for him.
That is interesting that you've seen Afghanistan and October 7th and obviously the war in Ukraine is they've fundamentally, very rarely I think do American elections tilt on foreign policy unless we're actually like in a war and we're sending people out there, especially in Vietnam. But this kind of has affected this election, at least in Biden's approval rating.
Yeah,
you can see it.
Perceptions of him tremendously, I think. Where we've gone from the situation where, and I wrote this like kind of in a case arguing that Gaza does matter to the race, where he went from being regarded as this competent, likable elder statesman to now not being seen as capable by voters. Like he's lost a lot of ground in terms of those perceptions. So I don't know if people are necessarily worried about the particular issues, like, oh, I want this ceasefire or that ceasefire deal done in a certain way. But like just the overall, just the vision, like the view of him as like kind of a capable, like experienced, like elder statesman, like I've said, just took a tremendous hit by that. And what's kind of like something that I think is a bit like kind of missed is that a big issue with this is, unlike the economy, where the Biden people do at least admit there is something of like an issue there, they've made efforts to kind of
eventually,
even if like I mean, they don't recognize it as like Okay, I mean as an issue, as in it's an issue for them politically.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that like they sympathize with people's hardship. Like they think it's an issue that people don't recognize how awesome they are, not like that like people have actually gone through tough times, which I don't think. But like at least there's kind of a recognition that like there is a political sort of issue there, and they've tried to like kind of scold voters into like thinking that times are good. With foreign policy, they do exist, and from what I've seen, and this is like really concerning from an electoral standpoint, and like them being keyed into how they're actually perceived, they sort of operate from this presumption that things are just like 2020, and Biden is regarded as like by default the more experienced, competent, reliable option overseas. Which is not really the case now. Biden's approval on foreign policy is far lower than his overall approval and his approval on the economy. People view Trump as a more reliable option on things like the Israel-Hamas, Israel-Gaza war. And that's just because, like, I mean, it's not necessarily that people think Trump had some amazing record. He's still deeply unpopular. It's just that Biden is seen as just so out of it that the idea of this kind of capable, like Trump being like more energetic and like guy who gets shit done and who like served in the office before, like he wouldn't stand as more capable in comparison to literally any other competitor. He's not regarded actually well, but in comparison to Biden, who's seen as just kind of inept and asleep at the wheel, he has a certain advantage that I think can explain why he has his polling leads.
Let's get into this debate, because I think it's a fascinating contest, not only because it's so early, but because as somebody who's studied these debates, the strategy is clear for both of them, which is shut up and let the other one talk more.
100%.
And yet both of them are probably incapable of doing that. They're going to want to talk a lot. You believe that this was a tremendous mistake for Donald Trump to
100%.
take this debate. Explain your point of view.
There's no reason for this because he's already ahead. The polling has been incredibly static. So, like, basically my view of the race, as I said earlier, is that Trump's biggest hope, beyond the fact that maybe he like actually does something to help himself for once in his life, is that people just don't pay attention to the race. That they kind of just keep the perceptions of the candidates that they have so far. The polling has stayed very, very, very stagnant for the past year, past like 9 months or so, since October 7th. Maybe a little bit movement towards Biden over the past couple of weeks as like just things steadily get closer and closer. But like he stayed in the lead, so he wants eyes to be off of him. And there was he was on track not to have to do any of these debates. The RNC did him a major favor in like 2021 by pulling out of the debate commission, which like they said, they're just biased against him. They don't. So I had always kind of smugly been like, there's not going to be any debates this year. They pulled out of the commission. It's not going to happen. Trump knows that they don't help him. Like that he doesn't want to do it. Like he didn't do the debates last year, and I was like, this proves that like I'm right. But then they just kind of abruptly agreed to a debate, like just a couple weeks ago. I'm like, well,
they baited Biden into it, right?
Biden baited Trump into it. Biden was the one who like proposed it, and Trump was like, yeah, I'll do it, and I want to do even more. And
Trump was doing events with like an empty stand next to him, saying that he would debate anytime, anywhere. Biden takes him up on it.
Yeah, I think it was sort of a mutual thing. It just mattered.
Obviously, it became a mutual thing because it came together in 2 seconds. So,
I think that is just a case of like the kind of, and maybe this is my fault if they're oft under-discussed, but the oft under-discussed kind of liabilities, like the kind of like lack of understanding the Trump team itself has of the race and of their own candidate. Because if you like do a cursory history of like Trump's history with debating, it's a big part of his mythology. Like everybody remembers the like iconic moments where like he tells like Jeb Bush that 9/11 was a mistake, or he like owns Ted Cruz when Ted Cruz is talking about New York values.
Yeah.
Or he has all of his nicknames. These are huge parts of his mythology. They're like parts of what everybody thinks about when they think about Trump, the politician. But the debates, like even in the Republican primaries in 2016, when he like it was so high profile, and especially the general election debates he had against Hillary and Biden, they've never helped him like at all. They've often hurt him tremendously. And the thing that hurts him, like has hurt him the most, has always been the first debate when like it's the biggest, most high profile event, and he's kind of reintroduced to people as kind of more of a person instead of an abstract concept of like this political dirty Harry who gets shit done. And that always really like brings him down. He took a tremendous hit after the first debate against Hillary. It was a larger hit than he took even like after Access Hollywood, which I think is always very kind of missed. Everybody remembers that kind of freak accident as being the reason why he tanked in early October and was like losing everywhere, and they were considering like kicking him out of the race. It was really the debate with Hillary that gave him the most damage. He took a lot of hit from that. He was down by a lot like after that debate and even before Access Hollywood. The 2020 debate, like the famous kind of like dumpster fire.
Man, will you just shut up debate?
Yeah, that one, which was seen, that one did hurt. That one is harder because unlike with Access Hollywood, which happened like 10 days after the debate, so there was enough data that we could like kind of separate the debate impact from the Access Hollywood impact. Trump getting COVID happened immediately after the debate, so it's hard to separate what was the debate and what was him getting COVID. But like during that debate, he also lost a lot of support. It arguably cost him the election because it was so close. And so you have this track record where debates, especially first debates, give him unwanted attention. So far, he's never won a general election debate, despite like it being such a big part of his mythology. So, and he had a really easy out to not have to do it this year. So it's just a totally, I mean, maybe Biden will just like shit himself on stage and then Trump will win by default. There's always a possibility that like he could win out on the race to the bottom. But all else being equal, this is just a tremendously unneeded risk for him, no matter how it goes, because it'll just, like, unless he's able to change his personality in the span of 2 weeks, like, he's going to come across poorly in this. People just don't like him. Like, he's never been popular.
Yeah, I mean, the like build it in a lab performance for him is he stays on topics that he is leading on. He takes a victory lap on the border. He talks about the economy, and he maintains that Joe Biden has a terrible foreign policy and everything was great foreign policy wise, aside from a few mean tweets. The problem is that he's going to be incapable of doing that. He's going to talk about January 6th. He's going to talk about crooked judges. He's going to talk about things that are broadly unpopular. But on the other side, Joe Biden, aside from whatever they jacked him up on for that State of the Union speech, has been, never more than 20 words away from forgetting something, mumbling something, or coming off as not great when he's just speaking off the cuff. So, again, both of them would do better to shut up, and yet either will be capable of doing it.
Yeah, I'm not expecting some tremendous performance from Biden. I think he might be able to outdo expectations because they're so low. I think that was the case of the State of the Union. I do think it's worth keeping in mind how much of the State of the Union was like us actually judging him relative to how he always does versus us judging him relative to our expectations. Because I'm being like honest, and I read about politics for a living. Like I don't really listen to many Joe Biden speeches, and the State of the Union was like the first time I like kind of followed him, and actually listened to him talk for an extended period for a while, and I think that was the case for a lot of people. And the reason why it struck us so much is that we kind of did expect him to do terribly based off of the kind of all the clips we've seen. And he didn't do objectively poorly. He kind of sounded like sort of on a little bit, a lot of yelling, but it was coherent. He kind of made his points. I think that he could, if I'm kind of caught by those low expectations of him, I think a lot of people might be able to. It really is kind of, the ball is in his court. He will have to kind of deliver in like some capacity. It's not just going to be a matter of Trump screwing up. Will he be able to do that? Maybe. I'm not like him. I don't really actually know how like put together he is. I think there's a good chance he could outdo expectations. But like with him, it's always just you never know what's going to happen, which is why he's just a bad candidate. Like it's just. It all kind of ties back to this. We wouldn't have to be worrying about any of this stuff if it weren't for him being so just a poor choice for this year in nearly every capacity.
I think, the nightmare scenario that keeps the Biden campaign up at night is the same reason why they don't make him or have him do interviews, is because he can't do an interview without mixing up a name, mixing up a date, or saying something that didn't happen. And that with the white hot microscope is going to be problematic. The best saving grace is that Donald Trump, is yelling and screaming and has a vein bulging out of his neck about something that is really unpopular.
Yeah, and I think there's a good chance that'll happen. I think Trump is very much in a bubble with things like January 6th. I think it's very, very possible that he'll be baited into that, and I don't think people realize just how far he's gone about January 6th. I think people sort of assume that, like, oh, he must have kind of disavowed it. But, like, that's not the case. He has, like, those people, like, singing, like, live streams from prison into, like, his rallies.
It opens every, so I've covered a bunch of rallies. It opens every rally.
I know.
The iTunes #1 song that they did where they're singing, I forget what song it is, and he's like reading the Pledge of Allegiance in the middle of it. Like, that opens every single rally.
Yeah, it's a huge part of his identity in a way that I don't think people are aware of, and he can get baited on that very, very easily in a way that I don't think he really realizes. Because I don't think he even thinks that it's, like, unpopular. He probably thinks that, like, the average person is disgusted by the unfair treatment that the January 6th patriots have received. And that's just not the case whatsoever. So, and Biden, I think, has blind spots in a lot of places, but, like, none of them are nearly as egregious as that.
Yeah, and this is why it's an interesting election. Donald Trump has always been a base first politician. He is there for the sickos first, and then he'll find everybody else afterward. And that's the reason why he does have such high unpopularity ratings, is because he'll say things that are outside of the mainstream. The problem with Biden is that we don't know what his base is right now. His base is older, whiter than it was, 4 years ago, at least according to polling, and his enthusiasm is not where you would want it to be. So
there's no coherent story behind why he should be elected this year. Any point you can make in his favor in terms of having a longer-term vision would apply to any other Democrat in the country.
Yeah.
The idea that he's a uniquely capable leader is farcical. The idea that he's like, he can't even really project any messaging by himself. It's just like, if he can win, despite all of that, the right is just like, oh my God. If they can, like, this year is kind of do or die for them, because you can't beat this Joe Biden. You're not beating under these circumstances. You're not beating anybody ever.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, that's a good place to leave it. Josh, Ettingermentum is the Substack. I would highly recommend people go head on over there and subscribe to it. I know you have a very vibrant community, because for some reason, when I downloaded, or when I on the Substack app, no matter what I set it to, anybody who starts a thread in your community pings me. So I know how vibrant your community is, because it comes through every single time, and I would highly recommend people go ahead and join it. Ettingermentum. Josh, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for letting me come on.
This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you support the show. Head on over there. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. $3 level gets you 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Donald Trump visited the Hill and made a bunch of news. We're going to go through what he said to the House. Trump did bring up abortion. He emphasized that the matter can now be left up to states, and encouraged Republicans to not run scared or get too extreme on abortion. Specifically, he said that if Republicans had handled abortion better in 2022, they would have had a 40-seat lead in the House. Boy, doesn't Kevin McCarthy wish. He dangled the prospect of replacing all income taxes with tariffs, which, I mean, if you want to float something wild, yeah, Donald Trump wants to get rid of all income taxes. That's a little interesting. He raised the idea of doing teletown halls for key races. He asked Marjorie Taylor Greene to be nicer to the speaker, Mike Johnson. In one of those, I don't know, there's 2 of these things that came out of this speech where I just have no idea in the game of telephone what actually was said. He apparently said that one of Nancy Pelosi's daughter said he and Pelosi would have been perfect together. Who knows? Trump accused GOP consultant Jeff Rowe of doing surgery on candidates' wallets. Rowe, of course, famously ran Ted Cruz's primary campaign against Trump and ran Ron DeSantis's campaign against Trump and is now actively being blacklisted by the Trump machine. He mused about Taylor Swift. He apparently believes that she is going to endorse Joe Biden. Trump called the Justice Department dirty, no good bastards, and according to Matt Gaetz, said Ukraine is never going to be there for us. But the thing that got the most attention was apparently the fact that Donald Trump said that Milwaukee was a terrible place. Of course, Republicans are going to be in Milwaukee. I will be in Milwaukee to cover that convention. So, what actually happened? Well, some Republicans said that he was talking about the election security. Some Republicans were saying that there's a high crime rate in Milwaukee. Who knows? Who knows? Does it seem reasonable that Donald Trump just decided to say Milwaukee was an awful place? I guess theoretically. He's from New York. Crapping on cities that aren't New York is kind of like the lifeblood of any true New Yorker. But who knows? Here's what I think it signals. Boy, are we back to who farted and where. We are back with S-hole countries. We are back with just the thing that gets said behind closed doors that everybody in the room says didn't happen, but one of the people inside the room almost assuredly leaked to a journalist, and then Donald Trump makes hay about the fact that the press is lying and he would never say X, Y, or Z. So expect some Truth Social rant about that soon. Moving on, a conservative group linked to House GOP leadership is launching a $9.5 million ad campaign against 10 vulnerable Democrats focusing on immigration. The American Action Network aims to leverage concerns about immigration and border security to win key congressional seats. Republicans aligned with Trump blame Democratic policies for the increase in illegal crossings and seek to link vulnerable Democrats to early decisions in Biden's presidency, most specifically his termination of Remain in Mexico. That is something that I have heard a lot from people that are on the border, the people that look at this specifically and mechanically, that there was efficacy to Remain in Mexico. It was not among the more controversial of Donald Trump's border policies. It wasn't a separation of children or anything like that. This was a practical thing. Biden takes it away, and now some people want it back. Some Democrats have actually come back and called on Biden to do it. The ads are going to be targeting districts in Alaska, Colorado, Maine, North Carolina, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Washington. One more little thing to go over. The crystal ball rankings. I don't know how much we've specifically talked about it, but there are a few outlets that a lot of people pay attention to. Cook's is one of them. The crystal ball is another. It's Larry Sabadow's outlet. So they have changed their ratings. Specifically, they have changed electoral college ratings, all of which in favor of Donald Trump and Republican candidates. Alaska going from likely Republican to safe Republican. Mistake. Alaska going from likely Republican to safe Republican. Georgia going from toss-up to leans Republican. Iowa going from likely Republican to safe Republican. Maine 2nd District going from leans Republican to likely Republican. Ohio going from likely Republican to safe Republican for the presidential, but there is a different story when it comes to the Senate. That is a big thing that we've seen a lot. And Pennsylvania going from leans Democratic to toss-up. The Pennsylvania rating is also changed, going from Bob Casey likely Democratic to leans Democratic. So that is moving in the Republican direction. It just shows that the polling so far has been remarkably steady. And we're looking at a lot of these forecasts and a lot of these models that are coming out that base in fundamentals that are favorable to Joe Biden. Like, if unemployment is at a certain number and you are the incumbent, are you more likely to overperform your polls? Stuff like that. As we march closer to the election, those fundamentals will be weighed under the continued polling of this race. And so far, the polling of this race has been pretty similar. You've seen Donald Trump with bigger than normal margins in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, 3 states that he lost last time. And he is leading barely in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Sabato, the Sabato crystal ball, which is based in Virginia, at the University of Virginia, they don't seem to buy the idea that Virginia is in play, but there we go. Worthwhile to check in on people that, have a lot of respect in the industry. We respect you. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you want to support this show. $3 level gets you 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Thank you to everybody that does it. And now, the Cosmic Kevin Ryan. A little surprise. Live here in our Austin, Texas studios. The one, the only, the Cosmic Kevin Ryan. How you doing, buddy?
It's good to be here, brother. It's good to be here.
Oh, man. Here, you want to? We will adjust the mic. Just a scooch.
Just a scooch.
Just a scooch.
There we are.
There we go. What brings you into town?
I am here profiling a guy named Michael Malice, the anarcho-capitalist Joe Rogan regular.
Yes. Yeah. He's an interesting dude. I've run into him a couple times because he moves in the Heaton circles, or Heaton moves in his circle. I don't know which is which.
Oh, it's always the Heaton circle. That's how I see things.
It's a Heaton-centric universe.
There we go.
We're all just orbiting.
That's how
his oblong head.
Yeah. That's the world I want. Yeah. No, it's cool. It's for this magazine.
Is it launched yet?
No, next month or so. Let's see. Yeah, I think July or August.
We'll have to have you on again to promote it because it is a really exciting thing. People don't usually launch magazines in the year of our Lord 2024.
Yeah, no, and that's what's wild too. It's going to be like a glossy, coffee table type magazine.
Yeah.
And my first piece is, I'm so glad I can finally talk about this. You and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
But I went to this thing called dirt racing, where it's like these they're called midget cars.
Yep.
Like they're smaller than stock cars.
Yeah.
And they just race around inside on this dirt track for like, I think it's like 55 rotations, revolutions, and it's so incredibly
Where
wild.
did you see it?
In Tulsa, yeah.
In Tulsa.
At this thing called the Chili Bowl.
Nice.
I know. It was like, so the story kind of wrote itself. And then there was like, my father-in-law who passed away always told me about it. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And for some reason, when I started writing, I was in a pitch meeting. I was like, hey, I could write about going to the midget races.
Yeah.
The midget car races. And so that kind of enters into the story.
Did you get into whether or not the word is still okay?
Oh, they don't care.
Well, I mean, they don't care.
Yeah. No, it's a terribly offensive word. Yeah.
Well, but it's like, I don't know, like at a certain point, if it's a technical term for another thing.
Yeah.
But I guess also if it's just a shorter version of a car, calling them midget cars. But then again, I don't know. Sometimes that was like a technical term before, and then it just got applied to a certain class of people. It's like retarded. Retarded was something that was like, it meant a specific thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then asshole started saying the word in a mean way.
Yeah, they ruined it.
Then it became like, don't say it. It's what mean people say.
Yeah.
But ultimately, linguistically, that just means that we're surrendering our language to assholes.
Yes.
Because assholes can say anything mean.
Yeah. No, I was reading about that in an article a while ago that was in the Atlantic. George Packer actually wrote it about the sort of softening up of language and surrendering it to the bad guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we're giving in to like language tyrannists.
Well, or just bad faith actors. Just like the worst people, like, because you're never going to be able to avoid the dicks.
Yeah.
You can only build your own world that is, hopefully has a higher ideal.
For sure.
But I don't know.
How are you doing, man?
That we wind up talking about.
Oh, always.
I'm doing great. We should probably talk about politics.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Hunter.
Oh, dude.
Give me your Hunter. Empty the file.
Oh, the Hunter file.
Kevin Ryan's Hunter thoughts.
Ooh, man. So I was
Number one, certified vibe.
Certified. Yeah, I think he was guilty.
Well, yeah.
That's my start. Let's start there.
Let's start there. Yeah. Look, when a Biden gets found guilty in 2 hours in Delaware, you know he did that.
Oh man, what about the optics too? Like Biden's being at the what was it? The gun control event.
Yeah. The Gun Safety University or whatever.
Yeah.
It was every
Presidential
town.
Gun Sense Forum.
Yeah. Every town and Moms Demand Action.
I've been to a few of those. They're really, really immaculately put together.
Well, they got that Bloomberg money.
Yeah. Is that a Bloomberg affair?
Every town is Bloomberg. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really...
That was a great regret for me that I didn't get to go to a Bloomberg political event.
You never went to in 2020?
He was out by the time that I had a chance. You know, because COVID had hit. He started running after COVID hit.
Oh.
So there were like a few events that happened, but at that point everybody was kind of locked down.
I didn't know that. I thought
I went to Tom Steyer events. Tom Steyer events were amazing.
Yeah.
Because they had full liquor and TLC performed at one, Juvenile performed at the other one. Like he had top flight talent. He was spending coin like to coax people and press to their events.
Dude,
although they did not open the bar until he was done speaking.
Oh, come on.
So they made sure everybody watched him speak. And then don't go chasing waterfalls. That was in Vegas.
Oh, that's cool.
But anyway, all right. So you're saying like the crowd for the Biden gun safety thing was, it seemed like it was mostly activists with the cause.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it's not like a large group of like people off the street. It wasn't like a political rally.
No.
It was a specific group that had like their annual event basically.
Yes, yeah. The one I went to, it's basically sort of a training course for activists of different degrees.
Gotcha.
And the one that I went to, actually, Kamala Harris, who was running for president at the time, was speaking to an audience of like mostly younger activists, telling them like, okay, this is what you need to do. And so it was so interesting because a lot of like what she was saying is like, you need to subvert the like press, and like
really
the press is in the back, and we're just I've had this pressure of like looking around, like, are you guys noticing that she's saying this?
Yeah.
But yeah, it never came up.
No,
never came up. Nobody brought it up ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Yang. Yang gave a talk there. That's when he like hugged that. Sorry, we're stuck in the last election.
That's fine.
But,
we'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah. Who'd he hug?
A woman who was like telling a story about losing a child.
Okay.
But it was really classy the way he did it, because he was like going in for the hug, and he's like, "Can I hug you?"
Yeah.
Like it was smooth, and it wasn't like pandering.
No.
I don't know. I always liked Yang.
He came out this week and said he wouldn't vote for a third party in a swing state.
Why do you say that?
Because he's Yang, man. I
Yeah.
never know where that dude is at.
Yeah.
Like he kind of felt like he's like, oh, I'm a number one Biden guy. Biden's great. And then he moved to Georgia so we could get Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff elected, and then didn't get a position in the cabinet.
Oh.
And so he's like, all right, I'll run for mayor. Runs for mayor, gets drummed out because you can't just show up in New York City and like, you know, act like you can walk to the front of the line. It's not, that city does not do that. You have to have favors that go back for a long time.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, screw this. I'm out of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party sucks. I'm starting my own party. And it's like, okay, well, you guys going to have candidates? No. Are you going to run? No. So what, how are you a party? He's like, I don't know. And then he's on a podcast saying, yeah, I hate Trump, and I would think twice about voting for a third party in a swing state. And it's like, well, either you care about third party stuff or you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't be.
That's strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. I heard his prediction during the like Mar-a-Lago stuff of like, yeah, he just won the presidency.
Trump did?
Yeah. Like you just gave him the presidency because he did that.
On this episode, the interview that we'll play before this is a great dude, Ettingermentum. He's on the progressive side, but he does this like election analysis. And he is very much of the belief that there is not a material upside for Trump either getting convicted and certainly not being thrown in jail, which I think is interesting. It's an interesting point of view. I just don't think anybody can know what's going to happen if a front-running presidential candidate gets thrown in jail.
Yeah.
Like, I think we're just off to crazy town at that point.
Yeah, we're pretty deep. We're already pretty deep.
Because I think if he goes to jail to a certain segment of the population, he's white Mandela.
Yeah.
And like, I think it consolidates the Republican base. I think Mitt Romney's putting on a MAGA hat.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to see a very strong consolidation there. Now, does it totally turn off everybody else? So that's like 47%. Does it totally turn off everybody in the middle? And they're like, nah, bridge too far, guy in jail. I can't vote for a guy in jail. That's bad. Maybe. And maybe it does turn off everybody else, but I don't think it's possible to know.
Yeah, it's been a surprise. I mean, election years are always full of punches, but this one has been so shadowy. Everything feels so shadowy. There's like such a lack of transparency with regard to what's gonna, and everybody's like so confident.
Well, no, I mean, but this is weird because normally in the last two Trump elections, Republicans were like the fiery underdog. They were like, don't trust the polls, shy Trump voters, like all this is like just media manipulation, blah, 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 blah. Now they're in the lead.
Yeah.
The polls show that Trump is ahead. Meanwhile, Biden is behind, and yet he's still kind of acting like he's ahead. So, I don't know. I feel like both sides are very uncomfortable being in the position that they are. I think that Republicans are uncomfortable being, I think that they find themselves saying like, well, the polls don't, they're good for us. Okay.
Change it.
I guess the polls are good. The good, strong polls. You're losing because of the polls.
So what do you think about Trump-Biden debate?
I believe, and I've said this multiple times, including in the other interview, in general, I don't think that debates really matter all that much. I think that in the moment, they very much are the center of the universe, and they tend to be, them and conventions tend to be the times where people like lock into the election. Now, what I don't know is whether or not having one in the middle of the summer, you got people that are on vacation. It's not the fall when people are usually back. Kids are at school.
Yeah.
People tend to think about the election after Labor Day. We're going to be way before Labor Day on this one. We're going to be like a month before Labor Day.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then you do have a chance for this to actually register and then fade before the election. And so you're not going to have something closer to the election to change it. That being said, the strategy for both are the same. Shut up. But that's a challenge I think both of them are going to find impossible.
Yes.
Because Trump's best tact is to let, hey, Joe, remember the last 15 people you met? Go. And then watch him ramble on about nonsense. And the one time he accidentally drank from Golda Meir's glass, and he'll say that Francois Mitterrand drove him to the hospital this morning. Like, there'll be random stuff that'll fall out of his mouth. And meanwhile, Biden's best thing is to say, hey, Trump, exactly how honest and true were all the January 6th protesters, and then have him go on a rant about how they're the most beautiful, pure, kind souls that have ever happened, which is a hilariously unpopular position with the general populace. So, like, I don't know. I mean, I think either way, I could see a bunch of different ways of it going. the one thing that is interesting is that I would not be shocked if it's a more sedate affair.
Yeah.
Because it won't be in front of an audience. And I think that might benefit Trump. Because Trump's like a big audience
loves it
guy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think he feeds off the audience. And he's not going to have one.
Yeah.
He's going to have Jake Tapper.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he can be pretty quiet when it's just an interviewer. I don't know if he sees.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. That's what he does when he's being sedate, but he wants you to shut up. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me.
I love the he's like looking for his next drink from the bartender.
One finger up.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I've watched I watched Biden's speech yesterday.
Yep.
And it was like mostly coherent. But he's just
he said he was a professor when he wasn't.
Yeah.
There's definitely some stuff with Biden where it's just like he just gets going and it doesn't matter.
Dude, he gets hyped.
He does.
He gets really hyped.
He's just like, I was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. It's like, you weren't, dude. Like, act like you haven't been in the public view for like 40 years. We know everything that you have done and not done. There's no mystery here.
No, and he's like lived in every different kind of community.
Well, have you followed like when he grows up, whenever he's talking to a different ethnicity or religion, he grew up like that.
Always.
It's like I grew up Italian. I grew up Jewish.
Yeah.
I grew up Greek.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't. It'll be wild.
Where do you think he is in like mentally? Like,
I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, obviously, we're gonna die. You want to dive into some conspiracy theories?
Sure, yeah. That's why people love you on the show.
Good. Yeah, I mean, what's he on? There has to be some sort of cocktail that he's on. It has to be some. It's a stimulant of some kind that won't make his heart explode.
Well, it's like the B12. That's what people say. Is that it's
B12?
like a B12 thing?
That ain't B12, baby.
You don't think so?
No, man. No, you seen the clip of him where he like doesn't blink the whole time?
Well, that was him at the Juneteenth.
Was that Juneteenth? Yeah, that one.
Well, no, it's like Juneteenth.
That wasn't B12.
Juneteenth, they have. It's like this entire crowd of largely. It's like black people, Joe Biden and Doug Emhoff are the only white guys that are there, and it's just like this like awesome soul song that people are performing. It's like, I don't want nobody.
Oh, and he's just like
you. And he is just wired. He's just eyes bulging and like he's like barely like he's just like smiling. He's not moving, and it could not be more obvious because everybody else has rhythm like around him, and he's
physically
just like white knuckling.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever saw Biden in person. It was like he had been gone. He'd been out for like 3 or 4 weeks. So it was, and I immediately realized why, because he walked in the room, and it was like they like made a ponytail with the skin from his face. And
well, that's the thing is like he used to have the waddle. That was like a famous. Even when he was young, he had a little bit of that waddle under his chin, and then during when he was vice president, he really had it, and then at some point. He's just like, well, that's where the extra skin is. Like, I'm not letting that go to waste. I'm not gonna Mitch McConnell myself and just have like this gigantic, turkey wobble.
Oh, he can't. Yeah.
And so that's where he started getting the facelifts. But I think that might have been where he kept his energy because now he doesn't have the wobble, but he can't string like 2 days together.
Yeah.
I do think that it's like. It's sometimes there's good days and bad days for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's sometimes where he seems fairly on top of it. He's still slurring and he's still forgetting things, but he doesn't seem like car wrecky.
Yeah.
And sometimes now he just feels car wrecky.
Oh yeah, I mean back to conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
His D-Day, the whole thing in D-Day. Did you see that?
Poop?
Yeah, he pooped, dude.
You think he pooped?
I got it. I have toddlers. Yeah.
Well, it started because he did the other one. Yeah. That was a few weeks ago where he did another thing where he like did this deep squat And that was the meme, was like anybody who has toddlers was like, that's a poop. Like, I know when my kid does that, I know what's waiting for me immediately. And then this one, he was sitting down in a chair, but he just didn't look like he was sitting down. Like, it looked like he was...
It was...
he was sitting down with a chair, but there was an H involved.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. His eyelids were closed. Yeah. And then, Macron was, like, chasing him out. Or Jill, like, rushed him out. And then... But it was funny, because I was like, I don't know. And then I saw a couple, media, or a couple articles that came out. And they're like, no, Joe Biden didn't poop himself. And that's when I was like, he pooped himself. He definitely
Well, that's
did.
the problem. The problem he faces is that it's kind of an unquestioned narrative now that he's losing it.
Yeah.
Aside, like, it's gotten to the point where it's, we have Bill Scher on this show, who's a very hardcore supporter, and you read like a Matt Iglesias, and now that crowd of people, which normally would just be the meat of people who support Joe Biden in the media, now they seem a little like out of touch when they're like, yeah, he shuffles, he slurs a few words. Now it's like, no, this dude is kind of out of it. That's sort of the unquestioned thing. And so whether or not he didn't know where the chair was or he was pooping himself, like, when the unquestioned narrative is that you are in decline, then you're gonna, those are the flies that orbit around that idea.
Oh yeah,
because people want if they understand that's the pattern, they want to find the dots in it. They want to validate the pattern. That's just a human nature thing. And obviously Republican partisans are going to want to do that because it's winning them the election and they think it's hilarious. But what you have to worry about is everybody else, especially as people start to get more involved in this election. There's this thought process that, okay, well, the more people realize what this election is, the more they'll be reminded that they hate Trump. Maybe. But also they might be reminded that they are scared of Biden being president and either not vote or vote for Trump because they remember the Trump economy being good.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I just remember too when, I had a press pass under Trump.
Yeah.
White House press pass. And, you get pool updates. And we used to get pool updates. You got them too. In 2020, right? Those pool updates.
No, I wasn't in the press corps.
Well, we need to get you in the press corps.
Yeah,
you need to be on that.
Holler at me.
But with Trump, it was like you could get 40 pool reports a day.
Yeah,
and you could find them on Twitter. You could find them. I think there were a couple like not Gawker, whatever's left of Gawker.
Yeah.
Had like a feed that would just automatically publish them. But about a month or two after the election in 2020, they just like stopped.
Really?
Yeah. And then when Biden came in, it was like there was no access. Yeah. There was like the press access in general just dropped considerably. And for me, that
was a COVID, quote unquote, that was like a COVID thing. We need to restrict what we have there in the room, but
let's cut down on.
We got to make sure. Well, because
let's get Ducey out of here.
Congress was like that too.
Yeah,
where like they didn't really open up
press?
Congress over everything.
Yeah,
like that was the whole. People had to wear masks, and that's where like you had like Marjorie Taylor Greene like not wearing a mask and getting fined and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, and that was more the mood. I think back then. The idea of, am I taking COVID seriously was a political marker.
Yeah.
If you were not taking it seriously, you were a Republican. If you were taking it seriously, you were a Democrat in the eyes of Democrats. And so that was a signal that they were being responsible, that we are limiting physical interactions. We are limiting Congress stuff. And then the Republicans won the House and they were like, ollie oxen free.
Yeah, open.
Go nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you do something that's very important, which is like remember the context. Like, and myself, a lot of us can be bad about that. Yeah, what a strange year. It's funny, we were just talking about the last time we hung out in person was in Tulsa.
R.I.P. Herman Cain.
Yeah, my man. He's up there.
999. You were a 999 in my book, big dog.
I mean, yeah, it was that rally. That's what got him, wasn't it? That rally.
He got.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the rally that got Brad Parscale fired.
Yeah.
That was like the TikTok thing where it's like, all the TikTok teens ran up the guest count, which made them think that they had a much larger crowd coming.
Yeah.
And now he's like the king of TikTok.
Yeah.
Trump is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, here, we'll look now. Have you followed any of this? That he
didn't he get like 1 million or million plus overnight or something?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and Donald Trump. Real Donald Trump, he's got 2 videos. One of him at a UFC event. One with what looks to be Logan Paul. 6.1 million followers.
Wow.
Do you want to take a guess what Joe Biden?
Oh, man, yes, I do.
What do you think?
1.5 million?
374,000.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Bro.
Dude's getting blowed out.
Dude, and he's gotten caught like bringing the TikTok.
Well, he's banned it. I mean, he signed a law.
That's bad.
That he's banning it. So I guess he's not super popular. But how funny 4 years makes. 4 years ago, it was the K-pop TikTok teens that ruined that Tulsa event, quote unquote. I don't know how serious that is, but still, that was the narrative. And now he's the undisputed king of TikTok.
It's so wild. I mean, I've really never thought Biden was cool. I thought...
Has anybody thought Biden was cool?
The Onion. Dude, remember The Onion did Diamond Joe? Well,
Yeah.
It was kind of a joke. We were kind of laughing at him.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look at
Because he was the weird uncle.
Yeah.
Because he has weird uncle energy.
Yeah, big time.
But yeah, it was like Joe Biden washing in the Camaro without a shirt on
Diamond Joe.
in the driver's or the front of the White House or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like there's that clip that surfaces every once in a while of Robin Williams making fun of Joe Biden.
Yes.
Like at his stand-up special back when he was vice president.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of feel like he missed his destiny of taking a powder after the one term.
Yeah.
I feel like if he took a powder after the one term, he would have been hailed as a hero, unless the other person lost, and everybody would have blamed the election on him anyway. But at the very least, he would have been able to say, hey, I should have run, blah, blah, blah. But I think...
Are you talking about as vice president? Like,
no.
Dipping out after
No.
that?
No.
Oh,
Obama
earlier?
screwed him then.
Okay, yeah.
He wanted to run then.
Yeah.
And Obama was like, that's an underreported story. What did Obama know? What did Obama think he knew? And why did he know it? Because I don't buy the idea that it's like, oh, the polls said he was going to lose. Obama's confident enough to say, no, the cleanest way that a third Obama administration is there. You're my George H.W. Bush. I'm Reagan. I'm going to go out, stump for you. People still like me. I'll bring our coalition there. That's the way you do it. But he didn't.
Yeah.
And I don't buy it was just polls. I think they really didn't get along to the point where he would want to cut off his own nose to spite his face. Obama would. Or, there was reporting in one of the Game Change books that Biden was getting yelled at because when he would do donor trips like in California, Biden was a little too friendly with the like, anyway, so I'm running in 2016. Like, just so you know, like, you could be something bigger than what you are right now.
Oh,
like,
boy.
And so he had to get yelled at for how aggressive he was being when it came to that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's
He seems
underreported.
like he does a lot of that. He has that. That's that uncle energy that you're talking about. That like creepy uncle energy.
Get rich quick.
Yeah, like, hey, I got power. I can help you out.
He's the uncle that gets your dad in trouble. Because it's like all of a sudden you're a kid, you have no idea why your mom and dad are fighting, and then it's like you find out later. It's like he gave $50,000, your college savings, to your Uncle Joe. He said it was a sure thing. Ask your father. Ask your father why we're not going on vacation this year. Ask your father.
Uncle Joe, man, every time.
I mean, the one thing that I don't think is really controversial is that he was going to go into essentially lobbying.
Yeah.
And then this opportunity in 2020 arises. But, like, I think he was assuming that if Hillary won, then that'd be another
out
8 years.
Forever of politics? I mean,
I think, come on.
in the front,
come
yeah.
on. How many times are you going to reheat this meal and pretend that it's something different?
I don't know.
I mean, Hillary was kind of toast after Hillary Care. Like, we can go all the way back to, like, 93.
Yeah.
Which is weird because Hillary Care was actually them going after the insurance companies. Like, and the insurance companies fought back and won. Now, would they have won if Bill's face was on it instead of Hillary's? The world will never know. But she was co-president. So,
that's kind of where they went wrong as well. Like you just said, that she was sort of like grabbing. It was a power grab for her, and then she could never remove herself from that image. Is that right?
Yeah, I think she wasn't particularly well liked. She's always had a vibe of inauthenticity to her. She's had like 9 different accents. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
She pissed off a bunch of women from the South when she had like the Tammy Wynette, like, I'm not some Tammy Wynette, stand by your man kind of thing. And it's like, oh, okay, you're just an elite chick from an all girls college with all that kind of goes along with that reputation. And I think she never really was able to recover from that. She tried to pull the RFK thing and be, New York senator to rebrand, but, then she gets stomped by Obama.
Yeah.
She gets wounded by Bernie, makes Bernie a folk hero, makes Bernie Paul Bunyan, and then gets, takes the biggest L in modern American history, if not American history in general.
Yeah, that was a pretty big one.
Like, you got to live with that forever. Yeah. And you just got to keep blaming like Vladimir Putin as like the reason. It's like, that's so sad. It's just so sad when you have to take an L so big that you're like, I'm still not going to wrap my head around it. It wasn't me. It wasn't
the
me.
Russians, man.
Yeah.
What about Michelle Obama?
But I lost to Trump. Wasn't me. I didn't go to Wisconsin. It wasn't me.
What about Michelle Obama?
If she wanted it, she could have taken it a long time ago. I do think that, any type of novice running, even if you're close to things, it takes a special kind of sicko to be a presidential level politician.
Special kind of sicko?
Sicko. You have to be sick. You have to be sick in the head, to do it. Trump is such a media whore that he learned the kind of hardest lessons of it doesn't matter when the call time is. I'm there, makeup ready. He doesn't drink. He doesn't like so there's an element of discipline for media whoreness that he has that is part of it. The other part of it is that you have to kind of live in the moment, know what the crowds want, know what the crowds don't want, and then put that together. I suspect that Michelle Obama, although on paper is really great, would it really translate? We can't know.
Yeah, her charisma factor isn't outstanding. She can fall flat pretty often.
Well, especially when it's like, okay, well, all anybody's going to compare you to is your husband.
Yeah.
Especially if you ran right after him.
Yeah.
So, and that's a hard act to follow.
Oh,
like,
big time.
Think what you will about Obama. He's an extraordinary orator, and he captured the heart of the nation. And so once you do that, it's hard to follow it. I don't think that she really had much interest in doing it, especially when it's like, why would you leave an otherwise awesome life? Your life just got awesome again.
Yeah.
Like, your kids are old enough that they're going to college. Like, you can do whatever you want. Everybody on earth is going to answer your calls. You can make a cookbook that's exclusively about celery or some weird stuff. Like, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Anytime that you're like, I liked Bridgerton, everyone's got a million hearts. Like, so brave, you're amazing.
Yeah, but like you said, they're crazy. They're mentally unstable.
I think politicians on that level are.
Yeah.
Politicians on that level are that crazy. And I think all of them have to share it. When you look at just the schedule that it takes to be a politician, it's grueling.
Yeah.
Like, I would challenge people, if you think that this is easy, look, especially when they're doing primary season.
Yeah.
Like, those schedules are brutal. It's up at probably 4. You're in the city you need to start at. Up at 4, hair, makeup. You might have morning TV. Then you got to run right from there to another event. You got to keep the event on time. Yeah. And then it's drive, event, drive, event, drive, event. Some of these people are doing 3-4 events in a day.
Yeah.
And if things aren't going well, guess what? It's grueling and it sucks. You're looking into a half-empty room and pretending that everything's awesome. That's got to stink when you're in an ego-driven field.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're big enough to be on a bus, you've got press around you all the time. You got press everywhere.
Yeah.
Just waiting for you to make a mistake or say something that's going to make our careers better.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't understand. So why do they do it? Why do they commit to all that?
Because you get to be the president.
And that's power, right?
It's the most powerful job in the world. You get a sub 50 list.
Yeah.
How many lists that awesome are sub 50? Not millionaires, not billionaires.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, I don't even know if trillionaires all time. Have there been more than 50 trillionaires? No, there hasn't been a trillionaire yet, has there?
Genghis Khan.
Yeah,
I think he's it.
That's it. One.
They got one of them.
We got one adjusted for inflation.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's tricky. I think there are so many similarities. We use so many sports metaphors when we're talking about politics, and that makes sense. It makes sense why a kid who would watch the Super Bowl as a kid wind up wanting to be in the Super Bowl and eventually winning the Super Bowl because somebody has to win it. Man, it just seems so much dirtier than sports.
Well, I also think that part of it is competition. That once you're in politics, I was up there in the House a couple weeks ago talking to a dude who works there, and he's like, out of everybody in the House, there's 15 that are really impressive people across the aisle. They really give a shit. Their positions are on point. They study. They show up. They're earnest. They are really the kind of public servants for which you would want to model yourself after. Mm. Then there's another 10 that are okay. They're the A-, B+ version of the first thing. Mm-hmm. Then the rest of them are just wholly unremarkable.
Yeah.
And then there's like 5 or 10 that are like, you're like a cartoon villain. Like, you're terrible. You are just the worst of us. And so if you imagine you come
And
from
this
there.
is in the House or
in the House,
in all
in
of
the House,
Congress?
In the House.
Okay.
And so it's like, imagine you're there and you're like, oh, well, I'm better than all these people. I can do better than that. I can go from House to the Senate. I can go from the Senate to the presidency.
Yeah.
Or it's like, oh, well, I'm going to be governor. And then I'm going to go from the governors to the presidency. Or you're Trump and you're like, I've just met so many politicians. I think they're all stupid. So I can do it.
Yeah.
You know, I think there is a competition
And then he
level.
did it. That's
And then does it, which is that's the one of the more remarkable things amongst all of that is he set such an unreasonable standard for a celebrity candidate, because celebrity candidates almost universally flame out.
Yeah.
I mean, all candidates almost universally flame out, but usually there's a very harsh reality for celebrity candidates. And Trump not only did it, but remember once he got in, there was this sense of like, oh, now we're going to see every actor, every celebrity. They're all going to run. They didn't.
No, yeah.
They didn't really. Because that's hard. It's hard to do.
Yeah, no. They already have a political platform too, potentially. I mean, they have all the avenues. They're more connected to the outlets for political expression and in a sense that can like sway public opinion than, you know, most people are. Man, what a wild dogfight. I couldn't have predicted any of this, and I don't know what's going to happen next.
Well, we'll have you back on in a month when the magazine launches. So
good.
we'll have a few more conversations before the end of it.
Beautiful.
What do you think about this debate? Because I don't think we'll talk before the debate.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm pumped. It's gonna be sloppy.
The Sundown Showdown.
Oh yeah. For a man who appreciates westerns,
Yeah.
this is gonna be the sloppiest, most pharmaceutically fueled showdown in history.
Yeah, whatever synthetic crank that they pump into Joe Biden's eyeball, his tear duct.
Oh,
and
Trump
then whatever British Sudafed that Trump just they sold during the Thatcher administration. He just snorts right before going up
Off a Big Mac.
Oh,
Just
dude,
rolls
yeah.
in. Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm like genuinely excited about it.
First time it's been in a TV studio since 1960.
I did not know that. That's cool.
Never returned to the TV studios after the Trump Kennedy series. Those were all in TV studios. They didn't have any audiences.
Wow.
The second one was via satellite.
No way.
It was Nixon in New York and Kennedy in LA, but they wanted to show off that satellite tech worked.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
CNN is hosting, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tap-a-roo.
Oh man, this is gonna be fantastic.
Excuse me. Excuse me. All right. Kevin Ryan, where can people follow you?
Twitter, the Kevin Ryan. I'm on there.
Little surprise. Surprise for everybody. You didn't even plug you. Everyone's thrilled. You're going nuts. And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. A reminder one more time to go and follow Ettingermentum on Substack. I think he's a really funny writer, and I enjoy his train of thought. I think that he's very much from the progressive perspective, but he doesn't suffer fools, and he gets right to the point. I dug him on the show. Thank you to him for coming on, and thank you to Kevin Ryan for stopping in. What a delightful treat to have him randomly in town, and I'm like, hey, if you're going to come and look at my house, you got to sit down. We got to bang out a half hour. TheYoungAmerican@gmail is where you need to go if you want to send me some feedback. I would also like to remind everybody that we are on YouTube. Like and subscribe on YouTube if you are of the visual persuasion. Helps with the algorithm. We do our best to try to ask you guys a question here. And unfortunately for everybody who I asked on the last episode, what do you think about 2 guest episodes? I did not intend to immediately do another 2 guest episode. It's just the way it wound up working out. However, I do want to ask you this. I'm curious. Do you guys keep track of the partisan lean of our guests? And do you have an opinion when a guest doesn't have the same partisan views as you do? Write that in the YouTube comments, the Patreon comments, wherever you might register your opinion. If you would like to support us with a one-time donation, you can do so. PayPal.me/PayJury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. And you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. P.O. Box 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. The only place you can get our bonus content is TakePoliticsSeriously.com. $3 tier gets you 2 bonus podcasts per week covering all the news that we miss on our free podcasting schedule. And our $10 tier. Get your name read at the end of the show like these fine folks on the Titanic. $10 tier. Sugar, Brady, Sam, John, Niemeister, Edwin, and Bo Gloria Young for King of the New World Order. Brian, Edison, Jeremy, a dog named Checkers. Sarah Jeannie, Matthew, Dr. G, Shad, Bob, Chill, Dustin, Brad, D-Laser, Nick, Just Another Pilot, Middle-Aged Mike, Utah, Jimmy Montana, The Jen, Alo, D. Reilly, Andrew, Lisa, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Devon, the CFP, Gloria, Gray Zone, Peapaw, J, Neil, John, DP4 Bongo, Neil, his nerdiness, Charles, Audrey stole Adler's spot, Darren, Idris Arslanian, Berkeley, Stephen, Pneumatic Terran, Molly's delightful demeanor, Adam, Chief Andy, Robert, Casey, Paul, and Bluefront, and the Lenina. You want to join their ranks? One place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. We're going to see whether or not this comes through. But as of now, there is a spot on my calendar where for the first time in the history of this podcast, I am going to be interviewing a candidate for president that will almost assuredly be on the ballot that you will mark. See if it happens. I think it's going to happen. You can take a guess. Trump, Biden, RFK, Cornel West. It's the Libertarian candidate. It's Chase Oliver. I don't want to. We'll see. I don't want to embarrass him if he backs out. But allegedly, we're going to be talking to him next week. So we'll see if that happens. Till next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss all 3.